A World Economic Forum insider has boasted that the global elite have found the solution to force humanity to stop eating meat and consuming resources. And these plans are being rolled out now to fight so-called climate change. Eating red meat under the WEF's new plan will result in a person becoming violently ill or even dying. This evil plot against humanity has been in the works for years, and now we are seeing the first steps play out before our very eyes. The World Economic Forum has been calling for governments to genetically modify citizens so they become allergic to consuming meat as part of a plan to fight global boiling. Make no mistake, the globalist elite have been carefully planning this attack on humanity for decades. In 2016, Dr. Matthew Liao, a WEF bioethicist, called for human beings to be genetically engineered to become much smaller in size and completely meat intolerant. Eating meat on the WEF's plans would result in a person becoming violently ill or even dying.
Possibly address really big world problems through human engineering. Another example is,
you go first.
Yeah, and another example is and here I'll go first, right? You'll see that I'm the smallest person here, right? And Amy's the smallest person. So it turns out that the larger you are, think of the lifetime greenhouse gas emissions that are required to the energy that's required to transport larger people rather than smaller people, right? But if we're smaller just by 15 centimeters, right? That's a mass, I did the math, and it's about mass reduction of 25%, which is huge. And 100 years ago, we're all on the average smaller, exactly about 15 centimeters smaller. Right? So think of just the, lifetime greenhouse gas emissions if we had smaller children, right? And so that's something that we could do.
That's right. The WEF's bioethicist admitted that the globalists want to shrink humanity through eugenics or hormones, making us smaller and weaker so we consume less resources. Dr. Liao's elitist proposals might sound absurd, like something from a science fiction novel, but globalist entities like the WEF and Gates Foundation take his philosophies very seriously.
So I'll give two examples. So one is that people eat too much meat, right? And if they were to cut down on their consumption on meat, then it would actually really help the planet. But people are not willing to give up meat. Yeah, some people will be willing to, but other people, they may be willing to, but they have a weakness of will. They say, wow, this steak is just too juicy, I can't do it. I'm one of those, by the way. So, so here's the thought, right? So it turns out that we know a lot about, we have these intolerance to, for example, I have milk intolerance, and some people are intolerant to crayfish. So possibly we can use human engineering to make it the case that we're intolerant to certain kinds of meat, to certain kinds of bovine proteins. And there's actually analogs of this in life. There's this thing called the Lone Star tick, where if it bites you, you'll become allergic to meat. I can describe the mechanism. So that's something that we can do through human engineering. We can possibly address really big world problems through human engineering.
Did you catch that? Dr. Liao said engineering ticks to bite humans and make them intolerant to meat is, and I quote, something we can do. But it gets worse. Here at The People's Voice, we have been warning whoever will listen for years that the globalist elite want to make us sick, weak and ill. And now they're making their move. And in typical WEF style, they have left their fingerprints all over the crime scene. After this quick break, we'll expose their sick plan to stop you eating meat, whether you consent or not. But first, an important word from our sponsor. Australia is often the testing ground for the globalist elite's evil policies and plans. And it appears the country down under is at the forefront of the elite's campaign against meat consumption. Just as Dr. Liao said in 2016, ticks have been engineered to make humans intolerant to meat. Last week, the Australian media reported on an outbreak of the mysterious condition in the country, with ticks suddenly causing an intolerance to red meat. This is a sorry state of affairs in a WEF-penetrated country. Australia has fallen, and things will only get worse until the people reclaim the nation's sovereignty. But it's not just Australia. Cases are exploding in the United States as well. Scientific American reported on August the 7th that cases are on the rise in the US, and doctors usually don't know anything about it. The bite of the Lone Star tick, now found in the US South, Midwest and Mid-Atlantic, can trigger a dangerous allergy to red meat, dairy, gelatin, and even some life-saving medications. Known as alpha-gal syndrome, nearly 500,000 Americans have suddenly developed an intolerance to red meat. Exactly how Dr. Liao from the WEF said it would happen way back in 2016. They say that when people show you who they are, you should believe them the first time. The globalist elite at Davos have been showing us who they really are for decades, and humanity has repeatedly given them a pass, refusing to believe that we are in a fight for our lives with a cabal of Satan-worshipping psychopaths who are determined to depopulate the Earth. But we have all the evidence we need to haul these criminals before an international tribunal on crimes against humanity charges. But first, humanity has to wake up and smell the coffee before it's too late. 14 American cities have signed a World Economic Forum treaty that legally compels them to ban meat, dairy, and private car ownership by the year 2030. The WEF infiltrated US cities have formed a coalition called the C40 Cities Climate Leadership Group, and together they have established a target to meet the WEF's radical depopulation goals by the year 2030. If you were wondering what that looks like in reality, the picture couldn't be more grim. The C40 cities have agreed that their residents will be forced to comply with the following list of unconstitutional rules. 0 kilograms of dairy consumption, 3 new clothing items per person per year, 0 private vehicles owned, 1 short-haul return flight less than 1,500 kilometers every 3 years per person. The globalists plot to coerce humanity to eat alternative protein sources like insects, bugs, crickets, and Bill Gates' synthetic lab-grown meat tissue has been carefully designed to destroy our health, rendering us weak and useless and impotent, just the way the elite want us. Humans are set to become walking parasites if the global elite get their way and everybody gives up meat. Scientific research reveals that these insects contain the perfect armor that parasites and pathogens use to infect humans and animals and spread disease inside them. A 2019 study titled A Parasitological Evaluation of Edible Insects and Their Role in the Transmission of Parasitic Diseases to Humans and Animals found that consuming insects poses severe health risks to humans due to the transmission of parasitic diseases. From the study, parasites were detected in 244 out of 300 examined insect farms. In 206 of the cases, the identified parasites were pathogenic for insects only. In 106 cases, parasites were potentially parasitic for animals. And in 91 cases, parasites were potentially pathogenic for humans. Edible insects are an underestimated reservoir of human and animal parasites. Other studies focused on chitin, a natural structural component found in insects' exoskeletons. A study published in a peer-reviewed Nature journal concluded that chitin causes an allergic reaction in humans. Maybe that's our body's way of telling us that we shouldn't eat the exoskeleton of insects. In response to these scientific studies, the WEF said that if you don't like the idea of eating bugs and lab-grown tissue as part of its Great Reset agenda, then it's because you're racist. Here at The People's Voice, we are determined to continue exposing the crimes of the globalist elite, but we need your help.